People from all over the world want to do something in response to climate change, but they need leadership. The Asian Development Bank completed a study that supports the citizens and governments of the region. And now the time has come to sit at the table and plan the way forward. When the chips are down, the stakes are high. Ladies and gentlemen, there is much to do. Shall we begin? The ADB study confirms that Indonesia, the Philippines, Thailand and Vietnam are some of the most vulnerable parts of the world to be consequences of climate change. 80% of the people in much of the economic activity are within 100 kilometers of the coast, where rising sea levels could be as catastrophically high as 70 centimeters by 2100. As one of the world's most dynamic growth areas, the region's rapidly rising population will continue to seek work in agriculture, fishing and forestry, all of which are considered under threat. Climate change could force the relocation of millions of people, and the risk of death from related disease and malnutrition in some parts will continue to the highest in the world. The economic costs of such terrible impacts indicate that Southeast Asia will suffer more than twice the global average, losing as much as 6.7% of combined domestic growth product by 2100. However, if actions are taken now, with the countries collaborating on a clear strategy, such devastation could be largely averted. This threat is not from natural causes, but has been created by us, the citizens of the world. And now we need leadership to deliver a solution that works for Southeast Asia. So the question is, where do we start? And who takes the first steps?
Well, it's down to the politicians and scientists, isn't it?
They can't do it alone. It's all of us. Business entrepreneurs, volunteers and citizens all need to understand the situation and work together.
Well, my business is battling with recession, so I already have enough to deal with.
Using green economic development strategies, you might find the two challenges can be related.
It's all about educating people to change their way.
But that would take decades. Surely, climate change is already happening. It's too late now.
It's true that some of the impacts are now unavoidable.
But presumably we can do things to lessen the impact and adapt to a situation we know is coming.
Yes, adaptation is important. However, there's another way of throwing the dice on this.
Mitigation.
Yes, but we also have to completely change the way we live now if we are to prevent even worse impacts in years to come.
And who's going to make that happen?
All of us. But it needs to be driven by public policy and government interventions.
I think policymakers have to think out of the box, because if you continue with business as usual, then I think we are in trouble. The world is in trouble.
Change, especially long-term systemic change, is only possible if you create the platform on which change can happen. Policy is that platform.
Climate change is a phenomena that is not solved by the market. The industries are polluting but not incorporating the environmental cost. Therefore, you need the government to correct the market mechanism through taxation, through subsidies, through whatever.
Ultimately it comes down to pricing, so that you can either do it by removing subsidies or by putting on additional taxes to shape consumer and business behavior, or by adjusting import rules on environmentally sound technologies. Those kinds of shifts are all within the policy toolbox of governments, and you can see examples of those playing out around Asia.
One of the problems I have with looking at very narrow financial or economic analysis of the problem is that you lose sight of the human dimensions of it. The impacts of climate change are going to translate into several human impacts that we need to be concerned about.
2/3 of Indonesia is sea. So when we have the climate change, the sea level will go up. Even now, we have lost 29 islands. So when the sea level go up further, you can imagine that our experts told me that we will lose 2,500 islands. So for Indonesia, climate change is not a theory, not something that you should debate, discuss. It's a survival of the country.
So that means, this is a global scandal. So it's happening, but everybody, they not realize that's the, the effect, himself or themselves. They think that's this happening somewhere, not here. So this is the big problem.
So it affects the country itself, losing islands. It influences rice production. It hits the coastal area. It creates new diseases. And we are a developing economy with an income of less than $2,500 per capita income, with 230 million people. So the cost and the impact of climate change is significant.
We start to talk with the policymakers. Look, if you don't do anything, at the end of this century, you're going to lose 6.7% of your GDP, which is enormous. So inversely, if you take some action right now, which is less than 1% of your GDP, then you can avoid these damages. So what's your choice? You're going to take action now, or you're going to just leave it and doing something, and then later your next generations will bear this cost.
Let's begin with a global picture. Southeast Asia plays a crucial part in the planet's ecosystem. We are one of the most highly vulnerable global regions, and at the same time, we are responsible for about 12% of the world's total greenhouse gas emissions, so we are critical to the future global plan. The largest contributor to the region's emissions is the forestry sector, which holds the key to successful reductions. At the same time, the energy sector is the fastest growing contributor, but has vast untapped opportunities for efficiency improvements that could be achieved at little or even no cost. These kinds of options have the potential to mitigate up to 40% of the region's emissions by 2020. Another 40% could be achieved through fuel switching from coal, the cost of less than 1% of regional GDP. So the question is, how can we incentivize everyone to play their part?
As you say, it's a global issue.
But it's not easy to persuade people there can make a difference.
If everyone in the region knew that we have the world's highest technical mitigation potential in agriculture and forestry, it might empower them. If they knew that the savings we make through mitigation will exceed the costs, it might change their minds.
But our population is growing faster than most and will demand more.
We can achieve the positive growth by making low-carbon policies the norm and sustainable development planning a natural process.
I like to compare climate change to Pandora's box. She opened this box and all these demons flew out and bedeviled the world to this day. If we are to address climate change effectively, first of all, we've got to shut the box. Then we have to deal with the demons. Shutting the box is what they call mitigation. Dealing with the demons is adaptation.
If I cut off the tree, and I can easily make the money, and I can leave it with that tree, the timbers and so on. But what I'm saying for the climate change was something that's a really longer term issue, so that it's really a dilemma of choosing short-run choice or long-run choice. But anyway, the most important CO2 mitigation potential is the forest and also in the agriculture sector.
I think for agriculture, there is a lot of potential mitigation in, for example, in rice. Asia is a continent with a lot of rice farmers, and methane reduction is a definite possibility. We can promote practices that reduce methane emissions from paddy fields, and there are technologies available for that.
On the climate change mitigation side, it's more having to do with redirecting investment into areas that are going to lay the groundwork for the kinds of jobs that will be sustainable and will contribute to prosperity, but at the same time position the economies to be competitive and productive and well-placed for the future continued growth.
The policymakers is always interested in looking at the current problem because they stay in the government only 5 years. So they really want to think how they can